Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to my channel. I have to make a confession. The more I paint Space Marines, the less I seem to enjoy them. It almost feels like a burnout, and I think the reason is because I spend too much time painting them. There are so many edges and grooves, I end up wanting to paint all of them, and it makes the painting process seem to take forever. So I'd like to take a different approach with this video. I'm going to pretend I need to paint a whole Space Wolves army and see if there's a way I can find a better, more enjoyable balance between speed and quality. We also have a set of recipe cards to go along with this video, and you can download them and print them out. Details about how to get them will be down in the description below. The first half of the video will be beginner friendly and will cover the basics and paint the model to a battle ready quality. In the second half, we'll spend a little more time and add some highlights. So let's grab our brushes and get started. After assembling the model, I undercoated it with a gray primer and then attached the parts to corks for easier handling. Rather than using contrast to base coat the main armor color, I decided to use my airbrush. I'm designing this color scheme with army painting in mind, so I want to try to cut corners wherever I can. That way I can allocate more of my time to the highlight stage, which is where I feel like it matters the most. I began by spraying the model with a solid layer of Russ Gray. Russ Gray is a fairly weak color, so I made several thin passes with the airbrush until I had a smooth, even finish. With the Russ Gray layer looking solid, next I sprayed Fenrisian Gray on the model, focusing on the top and sides. I'm going for a subtle, zenithal style effect with this layer. The result is a lighter color on the top of the model, blending to a slightly darker gray on the bottom and underside. Next I shaded all the armor with a mix of 1 part Space Wolves Gray and 2 parts Contrast Medium. Work on one section at a time and apply plenty of paint so it flows into all the recesses. Then use the brush to soak up any excess paint as needed. The paint will continue to settle as it dries, so keep an eye out for pooling. Next I used a sharp brush and painted Black Templar in all the joints. A high quality sable or Kolinsky sable brush is important for this kind of work, and I prefer the Series 33 Kolinsky sable brushes from Rosemary and Co. If you'd like to get some of these brushes and support the channel at the same time, I have an affiliate link down in the video description. Thank you! Before I base coat any of the other areas, I painted a narrow black outline with Black Templar. This technique is often called black lining, and it will help give the model extra definition. This can take some time to do, but I think it's worth it. When I'm pressed for time, I'll try to paint just the areas that are the most important to me. Next I painted the shoulder pads and the chainsword with Averland Sunset, leaving a narrow, black outline. I diluted the paint with water and applied a few thin layers for a smooth, even finish. I won't be shading this yellow, so I'm okay spending some extra time making sure the base coat is nice and smooth. Then I painted the pack markings with Mephiston red. I like to paint these symbols freehand, but you could use decals for this step if you want to. I diluted the paint with water and applied a few thin layers for a smooth finish. If you need to make any corrections, just let the paint dry and touch it up with some Averland Sunset. I painted the belt, dagger sheath, and weapon holster with Rhinox hide, and after the first layer dried, I painted a second for a smooth, even finish. I painted the pouch next with Steel Legion Drab, but if you want to limit your colors, you could paint it Rhinox hide as well. Next I painted the teeth and claw trophies with Bonewhite, and after the first layer dried, I painted a second for a solid finish. I base coated the runestone next with gray number 4 from my custom grayscale, and you can learn how to mix your own set in this video here. If you don't feel like mixing anything, Dawnstone is a close match. I painted all the steel areas next with Iron Hand steel, and after the first layer dried, I painted a second for a bright, even finish. I base coated the remaining details with 2 layers of Runelord brass. Next I shaded the metal and leather with Basilicanum gray. I like to think of this like a really strong version of Nuln Oil. Since the armor is relatively bright, I'd like the other details to be much darker and provide some contrast to the model. If you don't want to use such a dark shade, you could use Nuln Oil instead. Once the shade dried, I painted a layer of black paint on the bolt pistol. You may need to apply a second layer for a solid finish. At this stage, you could base the model and call it finished. And if I were painting a whole army, I would recommend getting every model to this stage and play some games. Once each model is at this level of completion, and you can evaluate the army as a whole, I think it's a lot easier to decide how much more effort you'd like to put into the models. Let's paint some quick gems and eye lenses, beginning with a solid layer of white paint. Depending on which brand of white paint you use, it may take a couple layers for a bright finish. Make sure to leave a black outline as well. Then I painted over the white with a layer of Karandras green. If you want a deeper green, you could paint a second layer after the first one dries. I also painted a couple red gems on the back of the legs, and for those I used Blood Angel's red. Moving on to the armor next, and if you made any mistakes, it's easy to touch up the armor with Russ gray. Your model may be darker or lighter than mine, and I would recommend adjusting the Russ gray by mixing in either the Fang gray or Fenrisian gray. Test the color on a small part of the model and adjust as needed. The most time-consuming part for painting Space Marines is highlighting all the edges. Space Marines have tons of edges and grooves, and you'll run out of time if you try to paint them all. So I think it's really important to evaluate what highlights matter the most to you, and which ones can be overlooked. I like to focus on the top half of the model, especially the head, shoulder pads, and backpack. If you want to keep to a strict time schedule, you could try setting a timer for highlighting each model, say 5 or 10 minutes. Then start painting highlights, working on the most important areas first, followed by the least important areas, and then put the brush down and move on to the next model when the time is up. Next I highlighted the edges of the yellow sections with Moon Yellow. Now is a great time for me to ask you to do those YouTube things that we all love so much. If you're liking the video so far, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. If you really like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel further, please consider Patreon or a YouTube channel membership. We have some perks including a Discord server, printer-friendly PDF files of our new recipe cards, and early access to videos. And I highlighted the edges of the pack markings with Wild Rider red. Next I painted the edges of the dark leather with Bloodreaver flesh. And I highlighted the edges of the pouch with Steel Legion Drab. I painted sharp, narrow streaks of Bonewhite on the teeth next. I highlighted the edges of the rune stone with gray number 4, and if you don't feel like mixing anything, you could use Dawnstone. Finally, I highlighted the black areas with a sharp line of gray number 2 from my custom grayscale. Or if you don't feel like mixing anything, you could use Eshin Gray instead. I used a decal solution and applied a transfer to the shoulder pad, and after it dried, I painted a layer of Lamian medium to reduce the shine. I decided to add some chips to the pack markings with Averland Sunset and a sharp brush. Using an old brush, I applied some textured paste on top of the base. While the paste was still wet, I sprinkled some coarse gravel and fine sand on top. After the base dried, I painted it with a layer of thinned Rhinox hide, followed by a dry brush of Steel Legion Drab. I painted the rocks with Dawnstone, shaded them with a mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil, and then I painted the edge of the base black. I mixed Snowflock and PVA glue into a paste and applied patches to the base with a sculpting tool. While the patches were still wet, I dipped the base into dry flock and then shaked off the excess. This adds a powdery, fresh look to the snow. Finally, I removed the support pins and assembled the model with superglue. I'd like to give a big shout out to our supporters here on YouTube and Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. It really is a huge help. If you want to be like these amazing people and help support what I'm doing here, just click the join button down below or follow the Patreon link in the video description. Thank you. I think the hardest part about painting an army is giving yourself permission to enjoy the whole process. You could go all out on the centerpiece models if that's what you like, and set lower standards on the horde of troops if you want to. I know if I don't set an achievable goal, the project will never get done. And if I make things too difficult or too time-consuming, then there's a chance I may just abandon it. How do you make your hobby more enjoyable? Have you ever faced burnout? And how did you overcome it? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting.